had always been told he was crazy for taking mining contracts in the void sector. The pay was good, sure, but the void sector was where ships disappeared and rescue teams found only empty hulks drifting in space. It was where the Devourers lived. Nobody really knew what Devourers looked like. The few survivors who claimed to have seen one all told different stories. Some said they were massive serpents made of living shadow. Others described them as crystalline spiders the size of battleships. The one thing everyone agreed on was that when a Devourer found you, you died. They consumed everything metal, flesh, energy, even the quantum signatures of advanced technology. Didn't believe in monsters. He believed in math, physics, and the simple fact that rare minerals in the void sector could pay for his sister's medical treatment back on Earth. Sarah needed the best doctors money could buy, and those doctors charged prices that could bankrupt small planets. His ship, the Lucky Strike, was nothing special. A modified asteroid miner with basic life support, a fusion reactor that coughed more than it hummed, and mining equipment that predated most civilizations in this sector. But it was his, and it had gotten him through 3 years of deep space mining without a single major incident. The asteroid he'd chosen for his latest operation looked promising. Sensor readings showed high concentrations of uncrystallized quantum matter, both worth more than most people's houses. The asteroid was roughly spherical, about 2 kilometers across, spinning slowly in the eternal darkness between stars. Began his approach, running through the standard safety protocols. He checked his emergency beacon, tested his escape pod systems, and made sure his food recyclers were working properly. Out here, 3 weeks from the nearest space station, preparation meant the difference between life and death. The mining process was routine. Had done this hundreds of times before. He positioned the Lucky Strike near a promising mineral vein and deployed his automated drilling equipment. The robots worked efficiently, boring deep into the asteroid's core while monitored their progress from the ship's bridge. It was on the second day that things went wrong. Was eating his morning ration pack when the drilling robots suddenly stopped transmitting data. He checked his instruments, but everything appeared normal. The robots were still active according to their status indicators, but they weren't responding to commands. He suited up and took a small shuttle to the mining site. What he found there made his blood run cold. The robots were gone. Not destroyed, not damaged, simply gone. In their place was a tunnel that descended deep into the asteroid's core. The walls of the tunnel were perfectly smooth, as if something had simply dissolved the rock without leaving any trace of debris. Should have retreated immediately. Every instinct, every safety protocol, every horror story he'd heard about the void sector told him to run. But the tunnel intrigued him. It wasn't natural. The walls showed signs of artificial construction, though unlike any technology he'd ever seen. He descended into the tunnel, his helmet lights cutting through the absolute darkness. The walls around him seemed to shimmer with an oily iridescence, as if they were made of some kind of living metal. His radiation detector remained silent, and his atmosphere sensors detected nothing unusual. The tunnel led to a vast cavern deep within the asteroid's core. The lights couldn't reach the ceiling or the far walls. The space was enormous, much larger than the asteroid should have been able to contain. In the center of the cavern, something moved. His first thought was that he'd found some kind of ancient alien technology. The thing in the center of the cavern was roughly cylindrical, perhaps 20 meters long and 5 meters wide. Its surface was covered in what looked like scales, but scales made of pure energy that shifted and flowed like liquid light. Then it moved, and realized he was looking at something alive. The creature turned toward him with fluid grace, found himself staring at what he could only describe as a face, though it was unlike any face he'd ever seen. It had no eyes in the traditional sense, just patterns of light that pulsed beneath its translucent skin. When it opened what might have been a mouth, saw rows of crystalline teeth that sparkled like diamonds. This was a devourer, knew it with absolute certainty. He was looking at the galaxy's most feared predator, the creature that had destroyed countless ships and killed thousands of people. He should have been terrified. He should have been running. Instead, he felt curious. The creature made no aggressive moves. It simply watched him with those shifting patterns of light, its massive head tilted slightly to one side. Had the strange impression that it was as surprised to see him as he was to see it. "Hello," said, feeling foolish as soon as the words left his mouth. His suit's translation system picked up the word and broadcast it on multiple frequencies, just in case the creature could somehow understand him. The patterns of light beneath the creature's skin pulsed faster. It made a sound, a deep, thrumming vibration that felt more than heard. His suit's computer analyzed the sound waves and displayed a message that made his heart skip a beat. Unknown language detected, attempting translation. For several minutes, nothing happened. The creature continued to watch him, occasionally making those deep thrumming sounds. Stood perfectly still, afraid that any sudden movement might trigger an attack. Then his suit's computer chimed. Translation matrix established, limited communication possible. Hello, the creature said, its voice a harmony of different tones that somehow managed to convey meaning despite sounding nothing like human speech. You are small, different. His mouth went dry. The galaxy's most feared predator was talking to him. I'm human, he said. I'm sorry if I disturbed you. I was just mining this asteroid. Human, the creature repeated as if testing the word. I have heard this word your kind makes. Noise travels in metal shells, creates much heat and light. That's us, agreed. We're pretty noisy. The creature moved closer and had to resist the urge to flee. Up close, he could see that it wasn't just one creature but seemed to be made up of countless smaller organisms working together, like a living ship constructed from pure energy and matter. You do not fear, the creature observed. Others fear, others run or attack or make loud noises with weapons. You do not. Should I be afraid? Asked. The creature considered this question for a long moment. Yes, it said finally. I am dangerous. I consume. It is my nature. What do you consume? Everything, metal, flesh, energy. The essence that makes technology function. I must consume to survive as you must consume food. Nodded slowly. So you're not evil, you're just eating. The creature's patterns of light pulsed in what might have been surprise. Evil? I do not understand this concept. It means doing bad things on purpose, hurting others because you enjoy it. I do not enjoy consuming others, the creature said. It is simply necessary, but you understand this. You are different. They talked for hours, learned that the creature, who called itself something that translated roughly to Singer of the Deep Void, was incredibly old. It had been alive for thousands of years, drifting through space and consuming whatever it needed to survive. It hadn't chosen to become a predator. It had simply evolved that way on a world where everything consumed everything else. I am lonely, Singer admitted as their conversation continued. Others of my kind are rare. We spread across the galaxy to avoid competing for food. I have not spoken to another intelligent being in many of your years. How many years? Asked. 347. Felt a pang of sympathy. 3 centuries of isolation would drive any creature insane. No wonder the devourers seemed so aggressive. They were probably desperate for any kind of contact, even if that contact resulted in violence. Why haven't you consumed me? Asked. Singer's patterns of light dimmed. I am not hungry. I fed recently on the metal constructs you sent into my home. They contained enough energy to sustain me for some time. And you? Singer paused. You speak to me as an equal. Others see me as a monster. You see me as a being. The truth was, did see Singer as a being. Despite its alien appearance and terrifying reputation, Singer seemed remarkably similar to humans in many ways. It was lonely, intelligent, and simply trying to survive in a hostile universe. Would you like to see my ship? Asked on impulse. Singer's entire body brightened. You would trust me near your vessel. You said you're not hungry. And honestly, if you wanted to destroy my ship, you could probably do it whether I invited you or not. Singer made a sound that might have been laughter. This is true. Yes, I would very much like to see your ship. The journey back to the Lucky Strike was surreal. Singer moved through the asteroid's tunnels like liquid light, flowing around obstacles and adjusting its size to fit through narrow spaces. When they reached the surface, Singer paused to examine ship. It is small, Singer observed. How do you survive in such a tiny space? Carefully said, would you like to come inside? Singer's form shifted and condensed until it was roughly human-sized, though it still glowed with that characteristic energy. I can make myself smaller for a time. It requires effort, but I am curious about human technology. Showed Singer around the Lucky Strike, explaining how the life support systems worked, how the fusion reactor provided power, and how the mining equipment functioned. Singer was fascinated by everything, asking countless questions about human engineering and design philosophy. "Your technology is so inefficient," Singer said, but not in a critical way. "You use mechanical parts where energy would suffice. You create rigid structures instead of adaptive ones, yet it works. How interesting." "We use what we understand," said. "Humans aren't as advanced as some other species. We make up for it with stubbornness and creativity." Singer examined the ship's food recyclers with particular interest. "You must consume organic matter to survive." "Yes, mostly vegetable matter, some proteins. We can synthesize what we need from basic elements, but it takes energy." "Fascinating. I consume energy directly, but I have always wondered what it would be like to experience taste, as you do." "Had an idea. It was probably crazy, but then again, inviting a galaxy-devouring predator onto his ship was already pretty crazy. Would you like to try some food?" Singer's patterns pulsed rapidly. "I do not believe I can process organic matter the way you do." "Maybe not, but you could experience the taste. My food synthesizer can create almost anything. What would you like to try?" Singer considered this. "Something sweet. I have analyzed the emotional resonance of that word in various species' languages. It seems to be universally associated with pleasure." "Program the food synthesizer to create a piece of chocolate cake, real chocolate, not the synthetic substitute that most spacefarers had to settle for." He'd been saving his chocolate ration for a special occasion, and this definitely qualified. Singer examined the cake with intense curiosity, extending what might have been sensory organs to analyze its chemical composition. Then it carefully absorbed a small piece of the cake into its energy matrix. The reaction was immediate and dramatic. Singer's entire body flared with brilliant light, and it made a sound like a symphony of crystal bells. "Oh," Singer said, its voice filled with wonder. "Oh, I understand now why you consume for pleasure as well as sustenance. This is beautiful." Smiled, "I'm glad you like it." They spent the rest of the day together, shared more food with Singer, while Singer demonstrated some of its abilities reshaping matter at the molecular level, generating complex energy fields, and even singing, which sounded like whale songs mixed with electronic music. As evening approached, evening being an artificial construct on a ship without day and night cycles, realized he had a problem. His mining operation was complete, and he had enough valuable minerals to pay for Sarah's medical treatment. But Singer lived here, in this asteroid, and couldn't stay forever. "I have to leave tomorrow," said reluctantly. "I need to get these minerals back to human space." Singer's light dimmed. "I understand you have your own life to live, your own kind to return to." "I wish I could stay longer," said, and he meant it. "This has been the most interesting day of my life." "And mine," Singer replied. "Thank you for seeing me as more than a monster." Lay in his bunk that night, thinking about Singer alone in the asteroid. 347 years of isolation, with who knew how many more years stretching ahead. It seemed cruel that such an intelligent, curious being should be condemned to solitude simply because of what it needed to eat. The next morning, prepared for departure. He'd loaded his cargo holds with minerals worth more than he'd ever possessed in his life. But as he went through his pre-flight checklist, he felt a growing sense that he was making a mistake. Singer was waiting outside the ship when emerged for his final systems check. The creature had returned to its full size, and its light patterns seemed subdued. "Safe travels," Singer said. "May you find what you seek among your own kind." Singer said, his mind racing, What if you came with me?" Singer's patterns flared in surprise. "Come with you to human space? That would be impossible. I would be hunted, destroyed. Humans fear what I am." "Not all humans," said. "And I know some places where we could go. Research stations, deep space habitats where scientists study unusual phenomena. They'd be fascinated to meet you." "You would do this? Risk your life, your reputation, your standing among your people." Thought about Sarah, waiting for treatment on Earth. He thought about the minerals in his cargo hold, worth enough to save her life. Then he thought about Singer, facing centuries more of loneliness. "Yes," said, "I would." Singer was quiet for a long moment. When it spoke again, its voice carried an emotion that might have been hope. "I could make myself smaller, travel within your ship's systems as pure energy. I would not take up space or consume resources." "You'd do that?" To see the galaxy through your eyes, to meet others and learn about different forms of life. Yes, I would do that gladly. Grinned, then pack your things. We're going on an adventure. Singer made that crystal bell sound that had learned was its version of laughter. I have no things to pack. I am my possessions. Even better, welcome aboard the Lucky Strike, Singer. As Singer's massive form began to dissolve into pure energy, flowing into the ship's systems like liquid light, realized that his life had just taken a turn he never could have anticipated. He was no longer just a freelance miner trying to make enough money to help his sister. He was now the only human in the galaxy who had befriended a devourer. The journey back to civilization was going to be very interesting indeed. The journey to human space took 3 weeks and had never been less alone. Singer existed throughout the Lucky Strike systems now, a living presence in every circuit and data stream. The creature could manifest itself holographically anywhere on the ship, and it spent most of its time exploring human technology from the inside. Your computer systems are fascinating, Singer said one morning as ate breakfast. Its holographic form sat across from him at the small dining table, flickering slightly as power fluctuated through the ship's aging systems. So many separate components working together, yet none of them truly understand the larger purpose they serve. Kind of like biological cells, suggested. Each one has a simple function, but together they create something much more complex. Yes, exactly. Though your electronic systems are far less efficient than biological ones, do you mind if I make some improvements? Nearly choked on his protein bar. Improvements. Nothing major. Just optimize some pathways, increase processing speed, improve energy efficiency. I promise not to change anything fundamental. Considered this. On one hand, letting an alien entity modify his ship system seemed like a terrible idea. On the other hand, Singer had already demonstrated that it could destroy the ship any time it wanted to, so trust wasn't really an issue. Go ahead, said. Just don't accidentally turn my coffee maker into a quantum computer. Singer's form brightened with amusement. I make no promises about the coffee maker. Over the following days, the Lucky Strike began to run better than it ever had before. Systems that used to lag now responded instantly. The fusion reactor hummed smoothly instead of coughing. Even the artificial gravity felt more stable. Singer was careful to make only subtle improvements, nothing that would be immediately obvious to anyone who didn't know the ship well. I understand why you are nervous about introducing me to your people, Singer said during one of their conversations. But surely some humans would be willing to look past their fear. Sighed, some would, yes. But the problem is the ones who wouldn't. Humans have a tendency to shoot first and ask questions later when it comes to things that scare them, and devourers have destroyed a lot of human ships over the years. Not intentionally, Singer protested. At least not usually. Most of the time, human ships attack us first. We defend ourselves. I know that now, but most humans don't. They just know that encountering a devourer means death. I've been thinking about this problem for days. Where could they go that Singer would be safe? Most human colonies would panic at the mere mention of a devourer. Military installations would treat Singer as a weapon to be captured or destroyed. Even scientific research stations might be too afraid to study Singer properly. Then remembered Dr. was who ran a small research station called Haven Point in the neutral zone between human and space. Had met her years ago when she'd hired him to transport some unusual specimens. Was fearless when it came to alien life forms, and her research station was independent enough that she didn't have to answer to government bureaucrats or military officials. I think I know someone who might be able to help us, told Singer. Doctor studies alien life forms. She's not afraid of unusual creatures. Even creatures like me. Once spent 6 months living with a colony of crystalline worms on Vega Prime. Those things are the size of subway trains and communicate through seismic vibrations. If she can handle that, I think she can handle you. Changed course for Haven Point, adding another week to their journey. Singer didn't seem to mind the extra travel time. If anything, the creature was enjoying its first real trip through space. It could perceive things through the ship's sensors that couldn't even imagine gravitational fields, quantum fluctuations, the electromagnetic signatures of distant stars. Space is not empty as your people believe, Singer said one day as they traveled through a seemingly vacant region between star systems. It is full of life, just not life as you understand it. Energy beings that exist in quantum states, crystalline entities that feed on cosmic radiation, vast intelligences that span light years and think in geological time scales. Have you met others like yourself? Asked. Occasionally, we do not gather often. Our feeding requirements make it complicated, but we share information when we meet. Stories of the worlds we have seen, the species we have encountered. You humans are unique among the younger races. How so? Most species, when they reach a certain level of technology, become careful. They build safe worlds, predictable societies. They avoid risks. You humans actively seek out danger. You explore unknown regions, attempt impossible things, face creatures like me with curiosity instead of terror. Laughed, we call it stupidity usually. Perhaps, but it is a beautiful kind of stupidity. It makes you grow, evolve, become more than you were. Most species stop growing once they feel secure. Humans never feel secure, so you never stop growing. The conversation was interrupted by an alert from the ship's sensors. Checked his instruments and frowned. 3 ships had just dropped out of hyperspace, nearby military vessels, by the look of their energy signatures. "Attention, unidentified freighter," came a transmission on the standard frequency. "This is Captain of the UES Defiant. Heave to and prepare to be boarded for inspection." His blood ran cold. Military inspections were thorough, and if they detected Singer's presence in the ship's systems, things would get very bad very quickly. Singer said quietly, "Can you hide yourself somehow?" "I can minimize my energy signature," Singer replied, its holographic form already beginning to fade. "But if they perform a detailed scan?" "We'll deal with that if it happens. For now, just try to stay hidden." Opened a channel to the military ships. "This is Captain of the Lucky Strike. I'm carrying a cargo of refined minerals from the Void sector. My papers are in order." "We'll be the judge of that, Captain. Maintain your current heading and reduce speed to 1/4 impulse." As the military ships approached, tried to stay calm. Routine inspections were common in this region of space, especially for ships coming from dangerous sectors like the Void. If he just acted normal, maybe they'd check his cargo manifest and send him on his way. The lead ship, a destroyer-class vessel called the UES Defiant, pulled alongside the Lucky Strike. Could see armed boarding parties preparing in its docking bay. This was going to be more than a simple cargo check. Captain was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s with graying hair and sharp eyes. She boarded ship with a team of 6 Marines, all carrying weapons and scanning equipment. "Captain," she said without preamble, "we've received reports of unusual energy readings from ships traveling in your vicinity. We're conducting detailed scans of all vessels in this sector." "I haven't seen any unusual energy readings," said truthfully. "Just been mining asteroids and heading home." "Nevertheless, we'll need to perform a complete inspection of your vessel." Captain gestured to her team, who began spreading out through the ship with their scanners. Watched nervously as the Marines moved through his ship. One of them was particularly interested in the engine room, running detailed scans of the fusion reactor and power distribution systems. "Captain," the Marine called out, "I'm getting some strange readings from the ship's computer core, energy patterns I've never seen before." Moved to look at the scanner readings, her expression growing concerned. "These patterns are highly unusual. Captain, are you carrying any experimental technology?" "No," said, which was technically true. Singer wasn't technology in any conventional sense. "Run a full spectrum analysis," ordered her team. "I want to know what's generating these readings." Felt sweat beading on his forehead. If they identified Singer's energy signature, the best-case scenario was that he'd be arrested for transporting illegal alien technology. The worst-case scenario didn't bear thinking about. Then something unexpected happened. The Marine with the scanner looked confused. "Ma'am, the readings are gone. I'm not detecting anything unusual anymore." Frowned and took the scanner herself, running it over the same areas. "That's impossible. Energy patterns don't just disappear." "Maybe it was interference from my mining equipment," suggested hopefully. "Some of the quantum resonance scanners can create phantom readings if they're not properly calibrated." Gave him a sharp look, but seemed to accept the explanation. She spent another hour going through cargo hold and checking his documentation, but everything appeared to be in order. "Your manifest checks out, Captain," she said finally. But I want you to know that we'll be monitoring this sector closely. If we detect any more unusual energy signatures, we'll be back." "Understood, Captain." After the military ships departed, let out a long breath. Singer's holographic form materialized beside him. "Thank you for hiding," said. "How did you mask your energy signature so completely?" "I did not," Singer replied. "I cannot hide from their scanners indefinitely. Something else interfered with their readings." "What do you mean?" "There is another presence in this region of space, something powerful enough to generate false scanner readings. I believe we are being watched." Before could ask what Singer meant, another ship dropped out of hyperspace nearby. This one was unlike anything had ever seen, a sleek, organic-looking vessel that seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal. "Unknown human vessel," came a transmission in perfect English, though with an odd harmonic undertone. "We are the science vessel thought that swims between stars. We request permission to come aboard." Knew about though he'd never encountered them personally. They were one of the galaxy's oldest spacefaring races, masters of biotechnology and quantum physics. They were also notoriously reclusive, rarely interacting with younger species. "Why do you want to come aboard?" asked. "We detected the energy signature of an entity we have been seeking for quite some time. An entity currently residing within your vessel's systems." Exchanged glances with Singer's holographic form. "What kind of entity?" "One that your people call a devourer, though that name does not do justice to their true nature. We have much to discuss. May we come aboard?" After a moment's hesitation, granted permission. The ship extended a flexible docking tube that sealed against the Lucky Strike's airlock with biological precision. 3 came aboard. They were tall, graceful beings with pale blue skin and large, dark eyes. They moved with fluid precision and had the impression that they saw far more than human eyes could perceive. The lead introduced himself as Scholar Nav, who had been studying devourers for over 2 centuries. "We have been tracking this particular individual for some time," Nav said, looking directly at Singer's holographic form. "Not to harm it, but to offer assistance." "Assistance with what?" asked. "Integration," the replied. "The beings you call devourers are not natural predators. They are refugees from a dying galaxy, forced to consume energy and matter to survive in conditions far different from their original home. We have been developing ways to help them adapt to our galaxy without needing to consume other intelligent species." Singer's form brightened with interest. "You speak truth. My kind originated in the spiral of endless light before it was consumed by the darkness between realities. We fled here, but this galaxy's energy patterns are difficult for us to process efficiently." "Precisely," Nav said. "We believe we can teach you to metabolize ambient cosmic radiation and quantum fluctuations instead of requiring concentrated energy sources. You would never need to consume another ship or being again." Felt a surge of excitement. This could solve everything. If Singer could learn to survive without consuming other species, maybe the galaxy would stop seeing devourers as monsters. "What would this process involve?" Singer asked. "A period of study and adaptation at our research facility. We have created an environment that closely mimics the energy conditions of your original galaxy. With time and practice, you could learn to thrive here without endangering others." Singer was quiet for a long moment, considering the offer. Finally, it spoke. "I am interested, but I would not want to leave my friend." Nav looked at with what might have been approval. "Your bond with a human is unprecedented. Most of your kind avoid contact with other species. This suggests an adaptability that could make the integration process much easier." "Would be welcome at our facility as well," another said. "We have few researchers who understand devourer psychology as well as he seems to." Blinked in surprise. "I don't understand devourer psychology. I just talk to Singer like a person instead of a monster." "Exactly," Nav said. "That perspective is precisely what we need." And so found himself agreeing to accompany Singer to a research facility in the Veil Nebula. It meant postponing his return to human space and delaying Sarah's medical treatment, but the minerals in his cargo hold would still be valuable when he returned. More importantly, this might be the chance to change how the galaxy saw devourers. The facility was unlike anything had ever imagined. It was built inside a massive asteroid that had been completely hollowed out and transformed into a living ecosystem. The walls pulsed with bioluminescent patterns, and the air shimmered with energy fields that made skin tingle. Singer seemed to thrive in this environment. For the first time since had met the creature, Singer appeared truly relaxed. Its energy patterns became more stable, its movements more fluid. "This place feels like home," Singer said as they toured the facility. "The energy flows here are similar to those of my birth galaxy." Dr. First Among Thoughts, the facility's lead researcher, explained the integration process to them. It would take several months of careful work to retrain Singer's metabolism, but they were confident it could be done. "Your friend is fortunate," Doctor said too. "Few devourers have shown the psychological flexibility necessary for this kind of adaptation. Most are too traumatized by their exile to consider change." "Singer is special," agreed. "It's curious about everything, always asking questions and trying to understand new concepts." "Indeed, and your influence has been significant. Singer shows none of the aggression or paranoia we typically see in its species. Your friendship has helped it maintain its sanity despite centuries of isolation." Over the following weeks, watched Singer undergo an incredible transformation. The scientists used a combination of biotechnology and energy manipulation to gradually retune Singer's metabolism. It was a delicate process, requiring constant monitoring and adjustment. Singer struggled at first. Learning to process ambient energy instead of concentrated matter was like learning to breathe water instead of air. But the creature was determined, driven by the possibility of never again having to harm another intelligent being. "I feel lighter," Singer said one day as they sat in the facility's observation deck, watching stars drift past through transparent walls. "For the first time in centuries, I am not hungry, not desperate. I can simply exist without constantly calculating what I need to consume next." Smiled, "How does it feel to be free?" "Wonderful, terrifying. I have lived with hunger for so long that I had forgotten what it felt like to simply be content." The transformation wasn't just physical. As Singer learned to survive without consuming other species, its entire worldview began to change. The creature that had once been feared across the galaxy started to see itself as something other than a predator. "I want to help others of my kind," Singer said one evening. "If the process works for me, perhaps it can work for them as well." "That's a big goal," said. "There are probably hundreds of devourers scattered across the galaxy." "Thousands," Singer corrected. "And yes, it is a big goal, but I have time and now I have hope. With your help and the knowledge, perhaps we can end the fear that has defined my species for so long." Realized that his life had taken another unexpected turn. He'd started as a simple miner trying to help his sister. Then he'd become the friend of a galaxy-devouring predator. Now, he was apparently going to become part of an effort to rehabilitate an entire species. It wasn't the life he'd planned, but as he watched Singer practice its new feeding techniques, drawing energy directly from cosmic radiation instead of consuming matter, realized it was exactly the life he wanted. 6 months after arriving at the facility, Singer had completed its transformation. The creature that had once needed to consume ships and their crews to survive could now thrive on nothing but ambient cosmic energy. It was a medical miracle that would have been impossible without the combined efforts of science and human adaptability. Had also changed during their time at the facility. He'd learned more about xenobiology, quantum mechanics, and galactic politics than he'd ever imagined possible. They had treated him as an equal partner in Singer's rehabilitation, recognizing that his emotional connection with Singer was just as important as their scientific expertise. "The transformation is complete," Doctor announced during their final evaluation session. "Singer's metabolism has fully adapted to process ambient energy. It should never again need to consume concentrated matter to survive." Singer's joy was visible in the brilliant patterns of light that danced across its energy form. "I can feel the difference," Singer said. "The constant hunger is gone. I am free." But freedom brought new questions. What would Singer do now? Where would it go? The galaxy was vast, but most of it was still off-limits to a creature that had spent centuries being hunted and feared. "I want to find others of my kind," Singer said when they discussed its future. "Others who are still trapped by hunger and desperation, if I can show them that there is another way." "That's dangerous," pointed out. "Most devourers won't trust anyone who approaches them. They've been hunted for too long." "Which is why I need you to come with me," Singer replied. You are proof that not all species fear us. Your presence might convince them to listen. Had been expecting this conversation, but it still caught him off guard. Singer, I need to get back to human space. My sister needs medical treatment and I have obligations. I understand, Singer said quickly. I would not ask you to abandon your family for my mission, but perhaps there is a way we could do both. Doctor had been listening to their conversation with interest. There may indeed be a way, they said. Our research into devourer rehabilitation has attracted attention from across the galaxy. Several governments have expressed interest in funding expanded research. The pay would be substantial. Raised an eyebrow. How substantial? Enough to fund your sister's medical treatment several times over. The Galactic Council is particularly interested in finding peaceful solutions to the devourer problem. They would pay handsomely for a team capable of locating and rehabilitating hostile devourers. Singer's light patterns pulsed with excitement. We could be that team, you and I, working together to help my kind while earning the resources your family needs. The idea was tempting, but also terrifying. Seeking out hostile devourers was incredibly dangerous work. These creatures had been driven mad by centuries of hunger and persecution. They wouldn't welcome visitors, even other devourers. I need time to think about this, said. That evening, walked through the facility's observation gardens, trying to sort through his conflicted feelings. The gardens were one of his favorite places in the facility, a series of transparent domes that offered spectacular views of the surrounding nebula while containing Earth-normal atmosphere and gravity. Singer found him there, sitting on a bench and watching distant stars through the dome's transparent walls. You are troubled, Singer observed, manifesting its holographic form on the bench beside him. I'm scared, admitted. What we're talking about, it's not just dangerous, it's potentially suicidal. And if something happens to me, what happens to Sarah? She's counting on me. I understand your fear, Singer said. But consider this, if we succeed in rehabilitating even a few of my kind, we could save thousands of lives. Ships that would have been destroyed, crews that would have died. Is that not worth some risk? Sighed, when you put it that way. I'm not asking you to decide now, Singer continued. But I have an idea. What if we started small, one devourer relatively close to here? If we can successfully rehabilitate it, then we know the process works beyond just my case. If we cannot, well, we will have learned something valuable about the challenges we face. Do you know where to find another devourer? Yes, there is one in the Broken Reach, about 2 weeks' travel from here. It has been attacking merchant ships sporadically for the past 50 years. The local authorities have given up trying to hunt it down. Considered this. One devourer in a region where they wouldn't be entirely alone if things went wrong. It seemed like a reasonable test case. All right, said finally. One trial run, but we do this carefully with backup plans and escape routes. Singer's entire form brightened with joy. Thank you, I knew I could count on you. They spent the next week preparing for their mission. They provided them with advanced communication equipment that would allow Singer to broadcast on frequencies that other devourers could detect. They also upgraded the Lucky Strike with improved shields and a quantum encryption system that would hide the ship's energy signature. Used part of his accumulated pay from to send funds back to Earth for Sarah's initial treatments. It wasn't enough for everything she needed, but it would get her started with the best doctors available. The rest would have to wait until they completed their mission. The journey to the Broken Reach gave and Singer time to develop their approach strategy. They couldn't simply arrive and announce their intentions. The devourer they were seeking would likely attack first and ask questions later. We need to demonstrate that I am not a threat, Singer said as they discussed their options. Perhaps if I approach alone first and you remain at a safe distance. Absolutely not, said firmly. We stay together. If this goes bad, I want to be close enough to help. If another of my kind attacks, there is little you could do to stop it. Your presence would only put you in danger. My presence is what convinced you to trust me in the first place, pointed out. Maybe it will work again. Singer's light patterns showed uncertainty. The devourer in the Broken Reach has been alone longer than I was. Centuries of isolation and hunger may have damaged its mind beyond repair. Then we'll find out together. The Broken Reach was a region of space filled with asteroid fields and radiation storms. It had once been a thriving star system, but some ancient catastrophe had shattered the planets and left behind only debris. It was the perfect hiding place for a creature that wanted to avoid contact with civilization. Their target had been spotted most recently near a large asteroid cluster about 3 light towers from the system's dying star. Piloted the Lucky strike carefully through the debris field, watching his sensors for any sign of the Devourer's presence. They found it feeding. The Devourer had wrapped itself around a derelict cargo ship, slowly dissolving the vessel's hull and absorbing its metal structure. Unlike Singer's elegant energy form, this creature appeared crude and savage. Its body was a twisted mass of shadow and crackling energy, constantly shifting and writhing as it consumed the ship. "It's damaged," Singer said, studying the other Devourer through the ship's sensors. "The hunger has driven it mad. It no longer remembers what it once was." "Can you communicate with it?" "I will try." Singer began broadcasting on the frequencies that Devourers used to communicate. The response was immediate and hostile. The feeding Devourer abandoned its meal and turned toward the Lucky strike with obvious aggressive intent. Hit the engines, pulling back to what he hoped was a safe distance. The hostile Devourer followed, moving through space with frightening speed. "It's not listening," Singer said, its light patterns showing distress. "The madness runs too deep. It sees us only as threats or food." "Keep trying," urged. "Maybe if we—" The hostile Devourer struck the Lucky strike's shields with a burst of energy that made the entire ship shudder. Fought to maintain control as warning lights flashed across his instrument panel. "Shields at 60%, reported. Can you do anything to stop it?" "Not without harming it," Singer replied. "And if I use my abilities aggressively, it will only confirm its belief that we are enemies." The hostile Devourer struck again, this time with even more force. The Lucky strike's shields flickered and began to fail, realized they were in serious trouble. Then Singer did something unexpected. Instead of fighting back or fleeing, it left the ship. Singer's energy form erupted from the Lucky strike systems and interposed itself between ship and the attacking Devourer. For a moment, thought Singer was going to fight. Instead, Singer simply hung in space, making no aggressive moves despite the obvious threat. The hostile Devourer struck Singer with a massive energy burst. Singer absorbed the attack without defending itself, its form flickering but holding together. The attacker struck again, and again Singer simply endured it. "What are you doing?" called over the comm. "Showing it that I am not a threat," Singer replied, its voice strained. "That violence is not necessary." The hostile Devourer seemed confused by Singer's passive response. It circled around Singer warily, occasionally lashing out with tendrils of energy. Each attack made Singer's form dim a little more, but the creature never struck back. Slowly, gradually, the hostile Devourer's attacks became less violent. Curiosity began to replace rage as it realized that Singer posed no threat despite clearly having the power to fight back. Singer began to sing. The sound that emerged from Singer's energy form was unlike anything had ever heard, a complex harmony of tones that seemed to resonate through space itself. It was beautiful and alien, expressing emotions that human language had no words for. The hostile Devourer stopped attacking entirely. Its twisted form began to shift and flow, the chaotic energy patterns smoothing into something more organized. For the first time in centuries, it was remembering what it had been before hunger and madness took hold. "I remember," the hostile Devourer said, its voice a harsh whisper compared to Singer's melodious tones. "I remember the songs of our people, the harmony of the spiral of endless light." "You are not alone anymore," Singer replied gently. "There is hope. There is another way to live." What followed was a conversation that lasted for hours. Singer explained about its transformation, about the techniques for metabolizing ambient energy. The other Devourer, who called itself Whisper of Lost Worlds, was initially skeptical, but Singer's presence and obvious health were compelling evidence. "You truly no longer hunger for the essence of others?" Whisper asked. "Never again," Singer confirmed. "I feed on starlight and cosmic radiation. The constant pain is gone." "Show me," Whisper said. Singer demonstrated its new feeding techniques, drawing energy from the radiation of the distant star and the quantum fluctuations of empty space. Whisper watched in amazement as Singer converted ambient energy into sustenance without harming anything else. I had forgotten that such peace was possible, Whisper said. For so long I have known only hunger and the need to feed, to exist without that desperation. You can learn, Singer said. They can teach you as they taught me, but the process requires commitment and trust. Whisper was silent for a long moment, its form gradually becoming more stable as it remembered what it had once been. I am tired of being a monster, it said finally. If there is truly hope for redemption, I will take it. The return journey to the facility was tense but successful. Whisper followed at a distance, still not entirely trusting but willing to try. Found himself acting as an intermediary between the two devourers, helping to translate concepts and emotions that didn't exist in human language. Doctor was fascinated by Whisper's condition. The psychological damage is extensive but not irreparable, he announced after completing an initial examination. With time and patience, we can heal the mind as well as transform the metabolism. The rehabilitation process for Whisper was more difficult than it had been for Singer. Centuries of madness had left deep scars that required careful treatment. But gradually, with Singer's help and the expertise, Whisper began to recover its sanity and learn new ways to survive. You have proven that our techniques work beyond a single case, Doctor told and Singer as Whisper's treatment progressed. The Galactic Council is extremely interested in expanding this program. How expanded are we talking about? Asked. They want to fund a fleet of rehabilitation ships, with teams capable of locating and treating devourers across the galaxy. They're offering to make you the program's director. Singer would be the chief liaison with devourer populations. Felt a moment of vertigo. A few months ago, he'd been a struggling miner trying to scrape together enough money for his sister's medical bills. Now, he was being offered a chance to lead a program that could change the relationship between devourers and the rest of the galaxy. What about the other species? Asked. Are they willing to accept rehabilitated devourers? With proper safeguards and monitoring, yes. The fear of devourers has always been based on their destructive hunger. Remove that hunger and they become just another species, albeit one with remarkable abilities. Singer's light patterns showed intense excitement. We could save them all, every one of my people who has been driven to madness by exile and hunger. We could give them back their lives. Thought about Sarah, now receiving treatment on Earth with the funds he'd already sent. He thought about the galaxy's devourers, scattered and alone, trapped by their own nature. He thought about the countless crews who would never have to face the terror of a devourer attack if this program succeeded. All right, said, let's change the galaxy. The next 3 years were a whirlwind of activity, and Singer led teams across the galaxy, seeking out devourers and offering them a chance at rehabilitation. It was dangerous work. Not every encounter ended peacefully, and some devourers were too far gone to be saved. But for every failure, there were 3 successes. They established rehabilitation centers in remote regions of space, places where devourers could learn new ways to live without threatening other species. Singer became something like a folk hero among its people, the first to break free of the cycle of hunger and desperation that had defined their species for. Found himself becoming an expert in devourer psychology, despite having no formal training in xenobiology. His approach remained simple: treat them as people, not monsters, but it proved remarkably effective. Devourers who had been hostile to all other contact would often listen to him simply because he spoke to them with respect instead of fear. Sarah's treatments were successful, and with the resources now had available, she was able to return to a normal life on Earth. She visited him once at the facility, meeting Singer and marveling at the strange turn her brother's life had taken. When you left to mine asteroids, I thought the worst thing that could happen was that you'd get blown up by pirates, Sarah told him. I never imagined you'd end up as the galaxy's leading expert on cosmic predators. They're not predators anymore, corrected. They're just different. By the end of the 3rd year, the Devourer Rehabilitation Program had successfully treated over 200 individuals. The attacks on shipping lanes dropped dramatically as former predators learned to survive on ambient energy instead of consuming ships and crews. Public opinion was slowly changing as well. Where once the mere mention of a devourer had caused panic, now there were documentaries about their tragic history and their remarkable transformation. Singer had even been invited to address the Galactic Council, the first of its species ever to be welcomed in that chamber. "We have accomplished something remarkable," Singer said too, as they stood in their new headquarters, watching rehabilitated devourers practice their new feeding techniques in the training facility below. "We have given my people hope for the first time in centuries." "You gave them hope," corrected. "I just helped with the talking." "You did much more than that. You saw me as a person when the rest of the galaxy saw only a monster. That single act of recognition changed everything." Smiled, watching as a recently rehabilitated devourer successfully converted cosmic radiation into usable energy. Each success was a victory not just for the individual, but for the entire galaxy. Fear was being replaced by understanding, hatred by hope. "So what's next?" asked. Singer's light patterns shifted into what had learned to recognize as its expression of determination. "There are still hundreds of my people out there, scattered across the galaxy. Some in regions so remote that no one has encountered them for decades. And there are rumors of others, devourers, who have found ways to survive that don't involve consuming other species, but who remain hidden because they fear persecution." "Sounds like we have our work cut out for us." "Indeed, but I have learned something important during our time together. The universe is vast and often frightening, but it is not as cruel as I once believed. There is room for understanding, for change, for hope. And with friends like you to help light the way, even the darkest corners of space can be illuminated." Nodded, looking out at the stars beyond their facility. Somewhere out there were more devourers, still trapped by their nature, still seen as monsters by a fearful galaxy. But now there was hope, a proven way to break the cycle of hunger and violence that had defined an entire species. It would take time, patience, and courage, but had learned that the most important changes in the universe often began with a single act of compassion, like offering chocolate cake to a lonely creature in the depths of space. Singer had refused to leave his side not because it was clingy or dependent, but because together they had found something neither could have achieved alone: the power to change the galaxy for the better, one conversation at a time.